Oh, good morning, everyone. This is Lee, and I've got with me Pat today. So Pat's joined us from Upper New York, and we've got a blast of a day for you today. We're going to talk about something that I'm sure that you experience, and I certainly experience on an everyday sometimes as an entrepreneur, and that is being able to handle our stress. To be able to recognize stress and handle stress effectively, because at the end of the day, we're all humans, and there are going to be times that we are going to experience stress. And Pat's come on to join us as she looks at stress and understands stress the same as myself. But Pat actually looks at stress through doing creativity. So, Pat, tell us a little bit about what you're doing with stress, and how you feel stress occurs, and what happens with stress in the body as well.
Oh, thank you. Okay. And thank you so much, Lee, for having me on today. I'm thrilled to be here. And stress is something that I could talk about for a long time because as a woman entrepreneur with my own business, working, in the corporate world, working with other entrepreneurs, and as an artist, I have at times in my life been like a professional stress bomb, where all I could do was, okay, I got to do this. I got to do this. And just overwhelmed. I thought it was insurmountable. And, lying awake at night, trying to figure out, right, 247. That was the number that I used to see. Thinking, how long have I been asleep? 1, 2, maybe 3 hours at the most.
Oh,
And so I started to really think about it. And this was started when my kids were little. When my kids were in elementary school, how do I get back to sleep? How do I do this, right? And how do I make this all so I can be the perfect mom, which we all want to be when our kids are little. And I'll just tell you one story about where it's the journey to how to deal with stress started for me. So when I separated from my husband, my kids were in beginning of elementary school, and I moved into a new house, which was an old house. It was a fixer upper, and this T-shirt vendor that I'd hired decided that he was going to make some sort of weird example of me. Now he was a little crazy, and I kind of knew that. But later on, in front of a judge, he admitted that I was just easy pickings. He knew I was already stressed out. But
yeah.
here I am in the midst of all this, and he starts to fax and email me all these little notes with eyeballs on them to tell me, oh, no kidding, to tell me that he had his eye on me. Well, I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified. And I would lay in bed at night and think and just be completely overwhelmed. And I started to realize that the first thing I needed to do, because I am by nature a pretty creative person. I'm an artist, and now as I'm moving further into my career, I'm starting to really paint and starting to sell my paintings, starting to build my art career, which is, of course, where I always really wanted to be.
Yeah,
And
I actually saw some of your paintings
thank,
on your Facebook profile. They're amazing. They're a
oh, thank
great
you so much.
banner. It's so creative. It actually caught my eye, so I could see that you are definitely creative, Pat.
Oh, thank you so much. The paintings I'm doing today are really the result of all of the kind of creativity and stress work that I've done, actually, because what allows me to paint with a free heart today, and my paintings are so much better because of it,
Mm.
is all the work I did to try to kind of get myself into a headspace where I could work, right?
Mm.
And for me, the very first thing I had to do, and it took me a long time to figure it out, was kind of identify where in my body was I stressed, right?
Yeah.
I had to like start to develop, like I'd be lying there at night and you're kind of rapidly breathing and my throat would get
Yeah.
sore and I'd get a headache and it
Yeah.
seems so obvious now. Well, of
Oh,
course
that's
that's why, but at the time, right? It's very
yeah.
hard to determine. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
And the thing is too, it's being in tune with your body and starting to recognize. I know with me, when I'm really stressed, I feel it in my throat, and
Yes,
I feel it around my heart, and I feel heat. Like I actually feel heat.
yes. Oh,
So
well,
I
that, yeah.
straight away what that I'm under stress. Yeah.
And that's actually true for a lot of women. A lot of women
Mm.
carry stress in their throat, which, you
Mm.
think, you kind of you hear stories and you read about it. It's in your shoulders and it's in your back. But a lot of women actually do carry stress in their throats and in their neck and in the upper part of their chest. So
Mm.
but it takes a little, you have to kind of just be with it. I don't know. It's a little bit difficult to describe, but I would, for anybody in your audience who's just kind of in the beginning and really needing to do a little bit of self-analysis, when you're lying in bed and you're awake at night, is just like actually feeling it and real, identify.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were talking a bit, before we came on about sometimes, stress is identifying what's going on in your body, but also unhealthy stress. Like if you're in a situation that is repetitive, that you got something and you can't resolve it, and it's just repeating itself over and over and over. So your stress, it's not released from your body. It's just
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, that's an
all the
excellent.
time. That's really unhealthy because when we're stressed and we feel the chemical reaction
Yes.
of our mind and everything else
Yep.
in our cellular body,
Yeah.
then what happens is we've got to release that. And some ways to actually release that is to breathe out, like a big
Yep.
breathe out. But if we're not releasing it and we're holding on to it and it's repetitive, that's where burnout comes on because it can't be released from our body. And another way to release stress from your body too is obviously have someone to hug you or something like that.
We all need to be hugged. If you have somebody nearby who can hug you, it's the best, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Today with COVID, is it? Because
it is.
I don't know about you, Pat, but I'm getting paranoid. When I go to the shops and everything else, I can't believe that I keep my distancing. We've been trained now for about 12 months or so, or going on 18 months now with COVID, that we don't get near people anymore.
I think it's interesting. I agree because there's a sense of separateness, especially when you don't know who is and who isn't vaccinated and how is that all going to work. It's stressful, and I think it's created kind of a worldwide starting point for stress because everybody on the planet right now, somewhere in the back of your mind, you're wondering, have I done enough? Am I doing what's the right thing for me? Am I doing what's the right thing for society? It's a very stressful way to live.
And I think it's as we know, the normal is never going to be the same. Like this is what it is. This is what's
normal. Yeah, and I think it becomes even more important to understand the centers of your stress, right? Because stress and fear and those kinds of things, those come from our most basic, the reptilian brain, right? They come from the amygdala, the part of the brain that's designed to protect you from danger. And so the level of control over, we think we should have it. Our intellectual brain says, of course we should have it. But in fact, we don't have all that much control over our autonomic system. We really don't. What we have to do is learn how to use the other parts of our brain in order to become more proficient at seeing it and understanding it quickly, right? I think that's the biggest improvement that I've made over the time and experience and practice, which is a big one, is that if I can feel it fast enough, catch it fast enough, I got a much better chance of managing it before it becomes problematic, before I'm so stressed out I can't function. Paying attention to those signals. So to me, that's like without that, none of the rest of it matters. I think once you get to the point where you've begun to recognize when you're starting to stress out, right? I had a conversation with my brother yesterday because he still, his hands start to tremble. And I said, well, then probably when we were talking about creativity and what can I do? And I said, well, probably drawing isn't the thing, right? Because wouldn't it be frustrating? His hand is shaking and drawing. But for him and his wife, they go for walks and they go along, he lives in Rhode Island, and they go along the water and they talk about all the things they'd love to do someday, which when I think about what is a creative endeavor, that is a creative endeavor because it allows you to kind of begin to unwind and think about things in a different way, right? I call it, when I'm talking about it, and I'm talking to whoever's talking, because I talk about this a lot, but is it's that ability. I love the word disruptive. I love the word, the phrase turning it on its head, lifting it over. Like in my mind, it's all a visual Rubik's Cube,
Yeah.
right? So if stress is a Rubik's Cube and the problem that I'm having is a Rubik's Cube, if I continue to manipulate it and turn it over and turn it on its head, then eventually I'll find a path to something that will work. And for me, that creativity is that thing. Creativity. And I mean, I'm fortunate because I am an artist. So I have the benefit of practicing with pencils and brushes and wax. But I honestly, when I'm stressed out, I can't draw. When I'm stressed out, clay works. I work with encaustics, which is wax or metals or stones or something that gets my body moving. Right? Something that changes. Yeah.
And that's the key, is to get your body moving as well as being able to communicate what's going on. So with me, I'm the walker. I'll walk along the river.
I walk too, yeah.
I love walking, so I'm very fortunate that I live really close to the bay. And I visit the bay, to be honest with you, almost every day.
So I think that's brilliant. I think that's brilliant because the water, one of the things about art and creativity and what do we think art is it's about taking chances. And there's walking near the water and in the woods, right? Like tree therapy in Japan, they call it, right? Mm-hmm. Is that environment is different every time you go into it. So every time you're getting new information and you're being pulled away from what's happening inside your own head and just pulled outside of yourself. So I think any type of, that's why, I don't do well in a gym, but I know people that love the gym because it's repetitive and it allows them to move their body and allow their mind to wander in a different way. So it's really interesting because creativity is really about taking that risk and finding something, because I think you should try everything, right? So somebody said to me the other day, well, I'm just not artistic at all. And I was like, I don't even know what that means. What does it mean you're not artistic? And they said, well, I can't draw. Well, that doesn't mean anything. So I gave her one of those pre-printed mandalas, the mandalas, and there's thousands of them out there now. And I think they're out there because you can color that shape in, you can enjoy the color pattern, you can fill it with lines or dots or whatever. And that repetitive motion, that ability to, your mind and your body to be working together is very creative, right? It's like people who knead bread, right? Think of all the sourdough bread that got made when we were all closed down for COVID. It's a perfect example. It's a little science, it's a little art, it's a little craft, and it's a lot of work, right? And a lot of patience. But it provides this environment for your brain to set things aside that are worrying you and move with emotion and feel like in our case, right, walking and being by the water, because no matter what the body of water is, there's some form of tide. Something is coming in and something is going out, right?
And it's also like doing meditation, because you're watching the waves. You're watching the waves come in and out. It's so relaxing. Yeah. And it doesn't cost anything.
I know.
Up and go to if you're fortunate enough to live near water.
But even if you're not, because I lived in the city for a while and I loved the city. But what I loved about the city was, if you think about the city and I was in New York City not that long ago, and I've forgotten because it had been a while since I'd been there. There is a pattern and a method to the madness where, there's the pattern of people moving and talking and the sound and just even the traffic has its own pattern. And then you move away from the street and you go into a park or you're near a playground. So it's the same. If you allow yourself to get beyond what annoys you and what's annoying you, right? Then I think, because you can, the colors and the sounds and the lights in a city are really interesting and can be as much of a mantra as being by the water. I happen to really like the trees, but I'd forgotten how much when we were in it, because we did a lot of walking, is one of the reasons to go there, right? And because there's lots of little stores. I live in the suburbs in upstate New York, so pretty much have to drive to most places. And I'd forgotten how nice it is to have to. And of course, I got all my steps in, right?
Yeah.
There's definitely no problem. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think the main thing is you need to change. Like if you're feeling stressed and sitting at your desk, there's no point just staying there at your desk. You've got to get up and move your body and do something to actually relieve that stress. So it's important to, I call it, have your stress reducing go-to activities to start to have an awareness. Whether it's art, like what you do is creative, whether it's playing with Play-Doh or
see, but that is also all of that. Yeah. See, I would push back and I'd say all of that is creative. Even like, knitting is creative. Like knitting to me is like nails on a chalkboard. Knitting makes me crazy because it's sedentary and I can't do it. Well, I couldn't. Basically, I'm not a knit, but I can't. So one of my sisters, that's how she. And I have lots of sisters, and one of the things that she does when she's kind of stressed out is she knits, and she does these beautiful, wonderfully creative things. But she would tell you that she's not an artist and she's not creative, and I'm like, you're so wrong. You're so wrong.
Well, my mum used to, when she always did this. I don't understand why now. She would make tablecloths with cross stitching.
Yeah,
sort of thing. That's what she would do. That was how she relieved stress. But of course, she wasn't consciously aware of what she was doing. She was doing something. So, but when you're consciously aware and you start to have a good understanding of self-awareness, and you start to consciously choose the activities that that's going to give you instant stress release.
Yeah.
It's important to do, and it's important for, I think, people who are in the corporate and things like that.
Oh yeah, it's critical
to understand that sometimes a team member may have to get up and do something that helps them to relieve their stress.
Well,
they need to go for a walk outside the office at different times without someone over top of them, sort of going productivity.
That's one of the advantages of what's happening with COVID. So I have one meeting. It's Friday afternoons at 1:00. It's always the same. It's always the same time. It's every week, and I have a number of those where I meet with clients at a very specific time during the week. And that actually is one of my stress management tools. It's because that way it's in my calendar. I don't have to think about it. It's there. I know I'm going to be there. But this particular meeting on a Friday afternoon is we walk. We don't walk together because she's in California and I'm in New York, but we go out for a walk when we meet. And we did it because it's Friday afternoon. Well, for her it's Friday morning, but we also, because we tend to have a list of things we have to cover, and but we discovered for both of us that it actually helped us to be clearer about what we were doing, about what we were doing. So to me, that's one of the benefits of COVID, is that you have this opportunity to kind of rethink, well, how do I do my business life? When am I on camera and when am I not? Right? Some meetings people insist. Like I have a meeting at 8:00 on Monday morning that we're always on camera, because those people from all over the world, they want to connect in that way. And I totally appreciate that. But I've also, understanding that that's the way we're going to communicate in one environment or another, it does allow me to plan ahead, right? Yeah. And I think what you said just a minute ago is really important, because that first thing is becoming aware of how is your body responding to stress, because it is. That second piece is, how is it responding to stress? We start to identify what parts of my body are not feeling good, right? Am I getting a headache? Do I have a stomach ache? Is my muscles in my neck so tensed up again? That is the first clue to the types of activities, creative activities. For my world, I think they're creative activities that will help you to start to build a repertoire of tools to get out from under it. To get out from under the overwhelm, to get out from under the, the heavy breathing, I think. But in order to understand what tool is going to work, would you rather run or walk or sing or dance or paint, or solve a puzzle, right?
And this is where self-care comes into it as well.
Yeah.
It's such an important element is our health, our
Yeah.
mental health, as
Yeah.
well as the physical health and everything else as well.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's having that ability to really take time out and sometimes to be more productive in your business, especially with
Oh,
non-entrepreneur.
sure. Yeah.
Sometimes you've got to step back. You've got to actually step back and stop becoming a doing, and
Yeah.
start to just be. Allow you that time to
Yeah.
breathe and to recharge, and and that's what I do now. I do a lot of because I'm an entrepreneur, so I work from home, so I have
Yeah.
freedom to organise my day the way that I want to. But I actually love using Pomodoro timings and things like
Oh, I
that
don't know what that
in my
is.
time management because it helps me that after an hour, I discipline myself to take 10 minutes off every day on the
Well, good
hour.
for you.
And I either go down and recharge, have a cup of coffee, or stretch, or do something.
Yep.
But I find I'm much more productive by having those regular 5 minute or 10 minute breaks than if I work all the way through day, being stressed at trying to put some words on the blank screen or whatever I'm trying to do at the moment.
Yeah.
It's really, but for me, I have a ritual, and my lunch hour, I always leave my home office for an hour.
Oh, good for you. I'm not that disciplined.
Yeah, I always do that, and I go to my bay, go to my river, and I have lunch watching the water.
Yeah.
And that's why I do my daily exercise as well. So I do my daily exercise on my walk. I'm away for an hour. I come back. I'm so recharged.
Oh.
So no, I think as leaders too, within in the corporate as well as a leader of your own teams in business, it's understanding everyone is different, and having those conversations with your team members or people around you, and talk about these topics and start to have a conversation like we're doing right now, Pat, and find out how your team member or how your colleagues or your family dynamic or anything, how they can actually relieve stress and what are the signs when they feel any stress, and and coming to some sort of arrangement, because today it's about, I think it's more freedom and or more autonomy about really understanding that one size doesn't fit all.
I agree, and I think one of my admin is a good example. Probably she's a young woman, lovely young woman, very sweet, but she works too many hours, and I know it. And I know that she doesn't tell me about those hours. So I do, and as being in a leadership position, it's really important because an awareness of what her habits are also allows me to manage her work in different ways. So when I know that she's been putting in a lot of hours, and you can see it, right? They get stressed out. I will build in a break, or I will find something that I know needs to be done that can be really simple. One day we had a project where we needed to photograph some things, and I sent her to the farm market. I was like, you need to go to the farm market and find these things. Now, I very easily could have done it on my way home, but I knew that would take her away from her desk. She could shop for, you know what I mean? Those are the types of things that are so simple, but they are also creative solutions, right? Because I sat her down and said, you need to take some time off, and the kind of typical thing that you get, especially in a corporate environment, right? Because creative problem solving is I think one of the biggest benefits to thinking creatively about your stress and to using creative tools in order to be able to manage it. And then you have kind of the gift of being able to give it to somebody else, to say to somebody, listen, might be a different way to do this that's not going to be so painful. And let's kind of take to make that so.
And this is really interesting with creativity. And creativity, I was reading a book just recently called Decode Greatness.
I'm familiar with it. Yeah.
And it's an amazing book. And in that book, they were saying there was an experiment that this person was doing. And they had like 2 workshops going, and they were artists. They were actually with these artists, And they had one artist, and they, one group they sent away, and they said, okay, paint paint your pictures, do your work, your originals, and come back at the end of the day and show the group, the results that you've done. And the other one, they said, the other group, they actually said to that group, I want you to copy one of these top influencers who are an artist.
Interesting.
I want you to copy one of their pictures, exactly what they're doing, for 2 hours. And I want you to copy what they do. And after 2 hours, then I want you then to go back to creating your own original stuff as well.
Yeah.
And when they present at the end, the group that actually did we call it modeling or copying, the influencers of the industry, they were much more creative with their partner because they had learned by observing and the influencer, they had learned new techniques in their artwork. And this also happens so much with, when leaders and entrepreneurs and businesswomen women are put into mastermind groups and everything else as well.
Yep.
This is where we talk about synergy and the collectiveness and everything else, because when you're actually within a group and you're discussing and you're listening and you're observing, your influences in that group, you start to actually grab hold of their ideas and you look at it and you investigate it, and it helps you then to think more creative as well. But if you're trying to increase your creativity and you're solo and you're not interacting with anyone or not with anyone, it takes you a lot longer to actually tap into.
Artists, the idea of following a master, the idea of studying the masters, studying the artists that whose work you admire. That's been at the heart of how artists study for thousands of years, right? And right now, in many business quarters, right? And in many of the entrepreneurial people that you see out there who are talking about masterminds and talking about being able to sell better and do more, I would say 99.9% of those talk about modeling, about, basing your business success on the tools and successes that other people have had. And it really is an important part of trying to accelerate your progress, is not having to reinvent the wheel every time, but taking advantage of the learning that somebody else has done. I think that it's something like Audible, right? Because you can listen to books while you're doing other things, and you can get all those tips and all those other kind of interesting tidbits. I've learned so much from reading the words of wisdom from people who have been successful, as well as practicing. I've done more than one copy of a master's painting to figure out their stroke.
Absolutely. And that was really interesting with this book. I really recommend the book on Decode Greatness.
Okay.
Because they talk about there's 3 ways to be successful. One way is to be a natural talent at a skill, something that you're actually naturally talented at doing. A second way of being successful is by continual practice, like the high performance, like say for example, a tennis player, they'll practice their forearm for thousands and thousands and thousands of hours until they get it full. But the third one, which is the most successful one, is modeling, is looking at different patterns and then observing the patterns. And once you observe the patterns, then you bring your own creativity on top of those patterns. And then you can get success a lot faster as well. So before we wrap anything else as well, Pat, what are, if you were going to give 3 tips about how to manage stress effectively, what would they be? What is your takeaway?
I kind of said it in the beginning. The first one is figure out where your stress is living. That self-awareness is critical to doing anything else. The second one is, once you have an understanding of where your stress is living, look at the types of things that you can do to physically move your body, to change your mindset, to kind of reset things that are going to be compatible with relieving the stress. So if it's in your throat, if it's in your chest, if it's in your arms, what are the things that you can do? Like my brother, right? He shakes. He doesn't draw when he needs to relieve stress. It would make him crazy because so but then the third one is, once you've begun to identify what those are and you kind of practice, does this relieve stress? Does this help me? Does this movement work? Can I go dancing? Can I do something? Then it is to practice. Then it is to take that awareness, to take your kind of budding skills and begin to practice them so that you can become, I think for me, now I can identify it quickly. I know kind of what I need to be doing. And I know even if I can't do it right away, I can get to it at some point and I can do something small, whether it's getting up. But I think those three pieces are key, right?
Sure.
Because nobody can tell you what the right stress reliever is going to be for you. And part of creativity is understanding enough about yourself to be able to then, turn that into an understandable skill that you can then practice. And again, I think the whole point that you brought up about modeling, there's a lot of information out there about how great people manage their stress. And some of it's kind of hilarious. Others of it is really interesting. And there's a lot to be learned that way. Yeah. I do a lot of reading on how successful people are managing it. Yeah, I do.
Yeah. But the main thing is take action.
Yes.
Take action.
Yeah.
Don't just gather information and go, or don't wait until you're burnt out before you do self-care. It's so important to go more from a preventative mindset than a reactive mindset as well. So
I'll add to that. I want to add one thought to that. If you're already burned out, if you're already lying in bed at night terrified, like I was with my kids, with the guy sending me eyeballs, if you're already there, the best thing that you can do is just to breathe. Cut yourself a break. Like one of the things that I do when I'm in a panic about something's gone really wrong, and you can't control everything, right? Stuff goes wrong. Is I do, especially if it's in the middle of the night, you can think about developing a mantra. I never really ever developed a mantra, but I can breathe and I can listen to myself breathing, and I can listen to my heart rate. I can know if it's going way up or coming way down. And just that simple act of beginning to interact with your body may be active enough to begin to help you calm down and move forward a little bit. Yeah. Because sometimes even just that little movement, if you're already burnt out and you're already frantic, just that tiny bit of control will help you just feel enough better to then the next time get a little further and a little further. Right. What is that expression? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time?
Yeah. And just be aware that it's normal to be stressed.
Oh, yeah.
It's not normal to remain in a stressful pattern.
It's hard. Yeah, it's very difficult to remain.
That's very difficult.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much for chatting with us today. I hope everyone out there has got some ideas, and it's really about taking action, and working out what is going to be your go-to activity and your go-to people that you need to be aware of when you are feeling stressed, and remembering the importance of communicating and having those conversations. And it's like Pat and I am doing today. It's having a normal conversation around what's going on and how you come up with a solution. And again, thank you so much for tuning in.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Yeah, it's really great to have you here, Pat. And I'll talk to everyone again next week.
Good. Take care. Thank you. Bye.